This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about the most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. Guys, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show. Some call police work the greatest show on earth, or the front seat to the greatest show on earth, which, is arguable, but I wouldn't deny it. Thank you for being here, everybody. Getting episodes, interviews lined up again. We had a little blip there where we didn't have an episode last week. Well, we did. We had Cops in the News. I put it on the main channel. But I'm getting tons of people responding and signing up for more interviews, which is great. That's just the way it is. It kind of ebbs and flows. It can be tough, especially when you're dealing with coppers who are working and or are retired but still working, because that's kind of a thing cops do. So schedules can get screwed up, and kind of had the perfect storm of a bunch of cancellations in a row and had nobody to interview. I usually like to have a few in the can, so I don't have to, if there's a week when someone cancels, it's not that big a deal. But this kind of happened, and I was kind of screwed for an episode. So don't worry, that's not normal, but it does happen once in a while. Just bear with me. Plus, I have had the opportunity, as I often tell you, to work extra hours. So I did over 70 hours this last week, and I'm going to do the same thing next week. So it makes it, I look forward to doing the interviews, but it makes it difficult when someone cancels or can't show up, and then I have to somehow get somebody else, but I'm also working all those hours. So yeah, that's my big excuse, and I appreciate you being here for the show. It is the interviews in the back catalog behind this one are, I think, incredible, and no credit to me. It's all the men and women of law enforcement that come on here and voluntarily tell their stories raw and unedited, so that you can see what it's really like to be in this profession. And we have all walks of life, all different agencies from federal, state, local, village police. Even international guests are on here. So I hope you look at the back catalog and you enjoy it. I'm really excited to have this guest on for today. He is chief of police at the Dawson Springs Police Department. He started his career in 2007. The community there is really neat. I was looking at it online. It's a really cool little town in Kentucky. They survived an F4 and F2 tornado, which is insane. The only thing I know about tornadoes is from Twister, and I know an F4 is really bad. We have had tornado warnings here recently, which absolutely terrify me and my family, but all that to say, we did not have to suffer through one. So I'm really excited to have him on. He started his career at Dawson Springs and worked his way up to chief at small department, very similar to the one I'm working for now, and I can't wait to hear his stories and the experiences he's had. So without further ado, let me bring on the great Mike Opalek. Mike!
Hey, how are you?
Sir, honored to have you, man. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, I was excited to see that you were from a department that's similar in size to mine, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of common oh my gosh, bro. Like I said, I worked a lot. Common experiences, common, things that happen in a little department. But we were chatting a little bit before you came on, because you're originally from outside Detroit, which I've had guys on here from outside Detroit, and it sounds like an absolute nightmare being a cop there. But what do you like about the super small town vibe? Because Dawson Springs, from what I saw from the 1920s and 30s, it was kind of a resort town for people that would come from the city. There was big hotels there. Up to 50,000 people could be at town at a time. And now it's kind of, it's almost like the Lightning McQueen story from that movie where it's like the highways got built up and the cars, the automobile got modern and kind of lost a lot of that. I mean, I'm sure people still visit there, but and now we are 2024, small town. What do you think? What do you like about being a small town cop?
Well, so to kind of touch on what you just said back in the early 1900s. So the Pittsburgh Pirates, actually, their spring training was here in Dawson in the early 1900s.
Weird.
Pretty much all of the greats have played on a field that is still current that our high school team plays on. Honus Wagner, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, all those guys have played on a field that is right here in town.
Oh, that's awesome.
As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the largest freestanding wood grandstands. They're not metal. They're all wood. And it's still down there. Um, the small town, when I always tell this story when I first moved down here, or actually before I was even down here from Michigan. I come down here for a funeral, and the girl I was with, her and I went into just a small cafe, a small restaurant, and on a Sunday morning, and there's probably 40 people, 30, 40 people in this restaurant, and everybody stopped. Like the forks hit the plates, and everybody's just sitting there staring at us. And the girl I was with, she said to me, she said, "I'm so uncomfortable." And I said, "I'm not." She said, "Why?" I said, "Man, in Detroit, you can walk into a restaurant with a knife sticking out of your head and nobody's going to pay any attention to you." I said, "That shows that this community cares. There's strangers in their community, and they want to know who they are." So, that's the atmosphere that I immediately got when I came down here, is that this community does care about each other.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a cool observation. And it's not, it's neat from what I see online because it does have like a little downtown. It has, it's not like a rural, sparsely populated. It's like relatively land-wise, it's pretty small, but everybody's kind of right there. Like it's an actual little built-up town.
Our city boundaries is roughly about 4.5 square miles. But as far as the populated area, I mean, we're really only about 1 square mile, maybe 1.5 miles that's square. But we have quite a lot of things that, I mean, we have an airport.
Wow.
For a small community, most communities don't. It is a grass strip airport, but there is hangars out there. There used to be 3, but the tornado took 2 of them. So we do have several things, and we have our own independent school system, K through 12. So.
Oh, wow. I'm sure that sucks up all the tax money if it's anything like Massachusetts.
They are the cities. There's more employees there than obviously anywhere else, but it's a wonderful school. I'm the school I went to up in Michigan. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in my graduating class. My daughter graduated last year, and there was like 30 people in her class. So obviously a lot smaller than what I'm used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I get worried about because I live in a town of in Western Mass. It's not where I work, but it's nearby, and it's the town is almost 60 square miles, and there's 1,200 people. So it's rural. It's sparsely populated.
Wow, that's pretty spread out.
Massive town, not a lot of people. Has a cute little town center with the church and the country store and all that. But I do think about like, all right, my kids are going to want to go to cities. You know what I mean? That to them, the city is like really neat and like, wow, look at that. But I, of course, know what's going on in the cities now. So that kind of petrifies me, raising kids in a small town and then having them for the first time venture into a city. Obviously, I'll bring them first, but does that ever cross your mind? Like you found this great place to raise your kid and now it's like, oh, they're going to have to go into the world. Or maybe they'll stay there. That'd be great.
My wife, she grew up here in Dawson Springs, and she doesn't really know any other style other than small town living. I know a lot bigger, city style living and everything. And if my kids decide to venture off and move to a big city, then that's what they decide to do.
Right.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. I'm sure Dad will train them on shooting and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So, you guys have, is it 3 guys or 4 guys? Are you guys hiring fourth?
So, pre-2021, I had 5. Before the tornado, I had 5, and currently, right now, I have myself and 1 other officer, and then I have a school resource officer in the school that's all he does. He's retired, so if school's not in session, he doesn't work. I am in the process of hiring a guy. We've kind of pushed that back a little bit due to his current job that he's going to be leaving. But hopefully I'm budgeted for myself and 3 officers. Hopefully by next year, I'd like to be back up to that because there's going to be a lot of construction starting next year.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys have a lot of commercial stuff. It's tough, man. Like every place is hurting, all the police departments, but when you come from a small department, it it really hurts if you even just lose one guy. It's like it screws up your whole patrol schedule. It's like, especially if you're
we used to be. I was married to the 24-hour coverage. When I first started law enforcement in '07, we were 24-hour coverage for years, and
so you were coming out of the house if anything happened.
no, we were covering 24. We weren't at home. Somebody was out on the street patrolling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
With 5 guys.
I've done it with 3.
Wow. How do you do that?
Very, very supportive wife.
Yeah.
But after I took over as chief in 2018, when I had 5, we were still married to the 24-hour coverage, and we stayed 24-hour coverage until the tornado in December of 21, and after that, I read an article that the Southern Police Institute wrote about small town policing and 24-hour coverage with limited guys, less than 10 guys.
Yeah, because if somebody takes time off, someone's got to be forced to cover it, and that's no fun. That's bad for morale.
And I mean, not just bad for morale, but it's not safe. When you got somebody that's working, so many hours, non 12-hour shifts for 7 days in a row, 8, 10, or 12 days in a row or whatever, it can get very dangerous. So I had a conversation with the mayor and said, we ended up losing a guy, and we dropped down to myself and 3 officers, and a school resource officer. And I had a conversation with the mayor and said, I'm not doing 24-hour coverage anymore. It's not safe. So no, I'm no longer married to it, but I do fluctuate our schedules based on volume of calls. I monitor how much the sheriff's department and the state police answer calls when we're not on duty.
Right.
So to kind of supplement that a little bit, I will adjust our schedule. Like right now, I'm pushed more into nights than I am on days. So.
Wow. That's got to be tough too for like meetings and, do you guys do license to carries on there? Do the chiefs issue those, or is that the state?
That's done through the sheriff's department in Kentucky. The sheriff is the one that does the concealed carry.
Okay. That takes something off your plate. I'm sorry, I didn't ask. Do you have an Instagram you want me to put up?
I have an Instagram, but I'm not very active with it. I'm not really active with a lot of different things as far as social media and whatnot. So I was making some TikTok videos when back several years ago, and they were kind of police TikTok videos, and I ended up getting 30,000 followers or something or another, and it kind of veered off of police work because my hobby is bass fishing. I love bass fishing, and it kind of veered more into that, and I don't know.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, that's not a bad following at all. 25,000, 30,000 people.
Well, I had a couple of let's just say pretty viral videos that went multi-million views and whatnot, and but I ended up taking those down due to different reasons.
I understand. Yeah, it's always can get spicy when you're posting videos as a cop. You never know which way it's going to go. Mike, can you tell us about the first hot call you responded to as a young copper?
So, April 20th, 2007, I got sworn in as a police officer. 420. I got sworn in as a police officer. I find it funny.
Light them up.
So, April 21st, I was out on the street working by myself, literally covering town by myself.
Oh my! What was the training like down there?
So in Kentucky, at the time in Kentucky, you can be sworn in and go out and patrol and do everything that any other officer does. The only thing you can't do is run the intoxilizer. You have to be BA trained to run the intoxilizer. So if you was to get a DUI, before you go to the academy, you'd have to call another officer or a deputy to run the intoxilizer for you. Now, with that being said, before I started policing, I also dispatched. We had our own dispatch center here in town, and I dispatched part time. And the cops that were in mid 2000s working here, they were all my friends. So when I got off work dispatching, I would just hop in a car and ride with them for 3, 4, 5 hours and get out. And, I did this for about a year. So I kind
Get
of
a little
had,
taste of it.
yes, I did. So, but I do remember my first hot call. My first hot call was a domestic that I know we had been to several times. I had never been in the house and actually had to control a situation. Um, Obviously, because I wasn't a police officer, so I couldn't legally get out of the car. So I arrived. These husband and wife, no kids. Husband and wife are arguing, shoving each other back and forth. The chief of police heard that I was um, going to a domestic, so he ended up coming out to back me up. But of course, it took him 5-10 minutes to get there or whatever.
Sure.
And I hadn't. I'm so glad times have changed, because when the chief walked in, I had no idea how to control these two. So the only thing that I knew is I proned them both out in the living room, and there they are, both proned out in the living room. And my
Yeah.
chief walked, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, but they're not fighting anymore."
Yeah. That's funny.
So that was probably the first. That was the first call I had ever been on by myself, and I'll always remember that call. I'm not going to say that was a hot call. That was the first call I ever went on, and like I said, I'll always remember it.
No, that's what we're looking for on the first time, because it was hot to you at the time. Because we all know when we're new, your heart was probably pounding. You've never done this. You know what I mean? It was probably totally insane to you. You probably didn't. Probably was probably hard to fall asleep that night. You were all jacked up.
Well, that you say first hot call, so that was the first call, and yeah, it was kind of a hot call.
Mike, is this pre-academy? Like you're just on the road before
Oh
you?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I didn't go to the academy until September 23rd, 2007 is when I went, and I started April 20th.
Gotcha.
So I worked all summer long. As a matter of fact, I went to the police academy and had a governor's DUI award before I went to the police academy.
Wow. That's crazy.
But obviously times have changed, so you can't quite do that anymore.
Right. They used to do similar stuff in Mass. They would let you work.
As far as hot calls, something that always comes to mind, and I have a big long story on this. 2 weeks into my career, I get a call. My wife and I had moved into an apartment complex that let officers live there for like $100 a month or whatever. And we moved into there, and I was out patrolling, had just started my shift, hadn't really had a lot of stuff, major calls or anything, couple theft reports, normal small town stuff. And this night I was out patrolling, and it was about 10:30. The afternoon officer had left and went home, and the dispatch hollered at me and said, we have a code 9 threat, which is suicide. And in the apartment complex that mine and my wife that we had just moved into. And I was actually talking to my wife on the phone when they gave me the call. And so I proceed over there, and I pull up, and there was a guy sitting on the curb kind of in front of a car that was parked on the side of the road, and he was sitting on the curb, and I had stopped my cruiser right next to him. And I looked over, and he had a single shot 12 gauge under his chin.
Oof.
And his wife was standing next to him, and the neighbor was standing next to her, holding her. And I knew instantly that I was in a bad location.
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally 4 feet from me, 5 feet from me. So I put it in reverse and backed up and put the car that he was sitting in front of between us as a little bit of cover. And I got out of my cruiser, and he was counting. He was at 6, and he's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when he got to 10, he turned and looked at me and said, fuck you, and pow, pulled the trigger.
Oh my gosh.
And when he did, he of course fell back, and the shotgun landed on his stomach. And I turned and looked at his wife, and she was screaming at me to do CPR. And my first reaction thought, because I'm kind of a jokester, I like to kid around, I like to have fun. But my knee jerk reaction was, I hate it that I said this, but when she said do CPR, I looked at her and said, he doesn't have a head.
Yeah.
And then I turn and look, and both of his kids are sitting backwards on the couch, looking out the window, and watched everything happen.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm 2 weeks into my career, no training, and now this is where I'm at.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, of course, the chief came out, the other officers came out. They handed it over to KSP, Kentucky State Police, and Kentucky State Police did all the investigation. And actually, Kentucky State Police deemed it as an officer-involved shooting because I was communicating with him at the time he shot himself. I was communicating with him. So they deemed it as an officer-involved shooting. So, that was put on me before the academy as well.
That's crazy. I mean, especially when you're super new, that's enough for some people for that to happen to, and with no preparation, and then just quit and be like, I'm not doing this.
Well, I'm not taking anything away from my chief at the time, but when everything was all said and done and everything was wrapped up and we got the family out of the house, and the coroner came and removed all that, and everything was said and done, several hours later, my chief looked at me and said, all right, well, have a good night. I'll see you in the morning when I come in. And one of the troopers, which was a sergeant at the time, he's retired, he looked at the chief and said, whoa, you're going to have him work all night after that? And the chief said, yeah, he'll be all right. He's fine. And the trooper looked at me and said, what time do you get off? I said, 6. He said, well, I got off 20 minutes ago or whatever. He's like, but I'm going to stay here with you all night. He said, that's wrong. You don't need to be, number one, working, and number two, left out on the street all by yourself all night after that.
Yeah.
So he stayed with me all night long. That trooper.
Wow.
And, we had long conversations about things. And, he told me, he said, one thing that he told me that night that stuck with me was, he said, you have something now that most officers don't. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, 90%, 95% of the officers that show up on suicides that they have used a gun have no idea what it's like when they actually pull the trigger. He said, you do. You know. If you show up and somebody has a gun to their head or in their mouth or whatever, he said, you now know, instead of just wondering what that's going to be like, you now know.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of stuck with me, ever since that happened.
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing that Trooper was willing to do that. That's really cool. And like you said, not to take anything away from your chief, but really should have been his job. He should have either relieved you or at least hung out with you, but he probably just didn't know. You know what I mean? Like it's not like that kind of training or awareness was like, super prevalent.
I think what it was is looking back, and I guess defending his actions that night, looking back, when you're in that position, which I'm in now, and being married to the 24-hour coverage, if you don't have anybody covering it, I mean, you gotta have somebody covering it. And that's the way things were back then. Thank God I'm not part of that anymore, and we don't have the 24-hour coverage. And he didn't have anybody to work it.
Right?
He have worked it, yeah, absolutely. But at the time, he's not going to work nights.
Yeah, no, I get you. So now, if you are, say there's an officer not on, the county or state, can you just call dispatch and put them on? They'll cover.
So I make up a schedule, and the sheriff of Hopkins County and the post commander for our area, I give them our schedule as well. That way they know when we're working and when we're not working. And if there's any fluctuation, all I do is shoot them an email and they know and understand.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at. You can just basically let them know. I don't know exactly how it works 'cause I'm not involved in it. That my chief handles it, but it like the state covers for us. We don't have currently deputy sheriffs are corrections officers. They are starting to patrol, but in Massachusetts, traditionally the sheriffs don't patrol. They just do the jails and civil process. But
here in there's three police departments in our county. Our county seat, which is Madisonville, they have a large department, probably a 50, 60 man department. And then our sheriff's department that covers the county, and then Dawson Springs Police Department, which we're kind of the armpit of the county, down in the corner and away from everything. The sheriff's department is primary for the entire county, except for in the city limits, the two main city limits. Then the locals are, and KSP, they're not primary on anything on this side of the state. Now, when I was working during the tornado, which we'll get into in a little bit, I learned that Eastern Kentucky, KSP is primary throughout all the counties in Eastern Kentucky, which I didn't know this. Even city police, they like close down at 5:00 or whatever. They only do day stuff over there, and KSP covers everything.
Wow.
New to me.
Yeah, geez, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess in Mass, it's we don't really delineate. It's like the state police can cover for you, but they're not. It's a little sloppier. There's no like in other words, like city, town cops and state police have there's no they don't have a, like on a state road, like if there's a crash and I show up, a trooper can't come and go, hey, this is a state road, because I'm there first type of thing. There's nothing in the law that says they have anything over us or we have anything over them, but we can call kind of at will and be like, hey, someone's out sick. There'll be no coverage in this town. And then they have to cover.
I have countywide jurisdiction. Okay. Just because me and my guys, just because we're in our small community here, or in our small town, doesn't mean, we're a class 3 city in Kentucky. So that means the law enforcement has countywide jurisdiction. The good thing on that is during the day when I'm working, or in the afternoon or whatever, if county is busy and they get a call and I see it on our CAD and in our cruisers that they have a call and they're busy, well, I'll just go out in the county and take care of it for them.
Oh, that's cool.
So because we work together like that.
Yeah,
I'll help them. They help us. We'll go out and help them. We got a good thing going.
that's cool. Yeah, and in Matt's, it's not that easy. Every little town only has police authority in their town. So you cross the town line, you have to call. Traditionally, you'd have to call and ask permission from the town supervisor, officers on duty, and it's never denied. But it's it's one more step. Like we don't have any kind of countywide status, or like some states have peace officer status where you just have authority in the whole state, which I think is the way it should be if you're a trained police officer. But political powers at play don't allow that. So for us, we had to create like a Western Mass police mutual aid pact, where every single town had to sign a document saying your officers can come into our town. And then they put together this huge legal document, and there's a map, and towns could opt out. So there could be a town in the middle, like all the towns are colored blue that have opted in where you can have authority now. And like in the middle of this blue coverage, there's like 2 or 3 towns that are white. They didn't want other cops coming into their town. So Mass is just the land of little fiefdoms. Every chief is kind of like got his little thing, and everybody works well together, but it's just always been like that. They're just, it's messy.
We always called it Battle of the Brass back in the day. That's the way we called it. When I first started, the chief that I had, he didn't like our sheriff of the county, and our sheriff didn't like our chief. And it trickled down to the road units, to where we would get disciplined if we'd go back up a sheriff's deputy, and vice versa.
Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah.
And when I took over as chief, I had a long meeting with the sheriff, and we put all that. You can't have that in today's world. You can't. We have to all work together and be there for each other, and during big times, during big events or big tragedies, such as the 2021 tornado, if I was feuding with our sheriff or with the post commander for KSP or the chief of Madisonville, it wouldn't have worked. You
Right.
know, everything we have to be there for each other regardless. So the battle of the brass days needs to be over. I don't care where you're at; it needs to be over.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that for us because we have one officers on for coverage in all the towns around where I work. We do 2 towns. It's like a little regional police department, but 2 little towns. But they're literally your only backup. So it's like if there's bad blood between agencies, then you're screwed because then now you are waiting for a state unit. Which if they're close, it's good. If they're not, if you're on a bad domestic and it's 20-minute arrival time, that's a problem. Yeah. It's no. Then you're proning people out like your first call there.
Absolutely.
Mike, can you recall a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with in your police career so far?
Strange or bizarre? Probably the I don't know. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of strange things. I know one night this was kind of comical, but it was very strange. I was working. This is back years and years ago. There was 2 of us out working, and we got a call of a naked man walking through an apartment complex. It's like 6, 7 o'clock in the evening and during the summer. And so we proceed to head to that area, and we ended up getting a second call and a third call that said he walked out through the back through the woods, and me and the other officer gets there before I do, and the guy had walked across the little field and he grabbed this car cover. It was a tan car cover that was laying behind a house, and he like draped it over himself. And when the officer got there, he told him, he said, "Hey, come over here," or whatever. So the guy walked, kind of across this little field to him. And I get there, and the officer's just, I could tell he's just wanting to die laughing. And I'm like, I asked him, I said, "So what the heck's going on?" And he's like, "I don't know, but man," he said, "he looked like Moses walking across that field, because he had a big stick and he had that big tan car cover over him." And we ended up talking to the guy, and apparently he was on some hallucinogenic drugs or something, because God told him to walk into the woods and take all his clothes off and go for a walk. And
yeah,
that's where that's what we ended up with. But I found it comical because that officer, he's like, "Man, I swear that it looked like Moses walking across that field towards me."
Looking for Jesus in the clouds. Is it time?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Oh yeah, that's great. Naked people in police work. I never knew the amount of naked people you'd be exposed to in police work, but it's quite
like
prevalent.
Sometimes it's just like, just put your clothes on.
Yeah.
Why do you not have them on? I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, that drug-induced psychosis is. I think they used to call it cocaine psychosis, but I think it's like a lot of different drugs make people get naked. I think they get hot, and they just want to, cool down, I guess. So, Mike, can you tell us about most intense or terrifying call? I'm guessing this is going to be the F4 tornado, which sounds crazy, man. I don't even. Can you just tell us about the whole event, including because for me and a lot of people listening, we are not aware of what it's like to experience a tornado. Like I said, we've gotten alerts before in my county, and even to the point now where it's like, I was on shift a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, I'm getting alerts on my phone, and my chief's texting me. He's like, "Hey, there's counter rotation identified 4 miles from where you are." And to me, I'm like, counter rotation. So I'm like Googling it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea even what this is. The clouds are starting to form, and it ended up just being a very violent thunderstorm. It never touched down or anything. But so for me, there's a lot of terror involved, because to me, it's like a tornado, when I see pictures that I'm going to show when you're talking about it, is like they call it like the finger of God. Like, it's not like a hurricane. I feel like you can hide in your basement, and as long as you're not near like a major body of water, you're going to be okay, even if your house gets damaged. But with a tornado, an F4 tornado, it just like erases stuff. And even if in your basement, I feel like you could, if you're not killed, you could just be trapped in there, or a gas line will break and fill it with gas, and you'll die that way. So, can you just paint it from beginning to end, like it coming in, what it was like, and the alarms, and what your plan is, and everything?
So the December 10th, 2021. Of course, I had heard that there was a tornado that had been working its way up from Arkansas. That tornado actually started in Arkansas. It was over 200 miles long. That it kind of skipped and fizzled out and started back up and got up to F5 and then dropped back down to an F1 and so on and so forth. So late evening time, I had heard that, through the grapevine that there was bad weather that could be coming into our area. And of course, I just brushed it off like I always have because, it's Dawson Springs. There's not a lot that happens here. And about 15 after 12, my father-in-law text messaged me and said, "Are you watching the weather?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, which my house, I don't have a basement. My father-in-law, he does. He said, "Why don't you guys come over here and get in the basement?" And I said, "Well, I'm keeping an eye on this, and I'll make the decision once it gets closer to the time." And about 25 after 10, it was going through Eddyville, and I was watching the news, and it had that cone, and it said right in the middle of the cone said Dawson Springs at 10:37 or something like that. And I told my wife, I said, "Well, get your shoes on." I said, "Why don't you and the kids go to your parents?" I said, she goes, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go to town to make sure everything's fine." And she's like, normally she would say, "Oh no, you're coming with us." And she said, "Okay." So she got in her car, I got in my cruiser, and I followed her, and she went into her parents, and of course I lit up with the blue lights and went into town, which we live in town. It was just coming through town.
Mm-hmm.
And my first instinct, I've spent the last 16 years or so, protecting Dawson. And my first instinct was to go to the county line where the storm was coming in. Number one, to get a visual of it, but number two, kind of instinctively to see if I could deter it to go a different way, maybe.
Right.
Try to block it. I don't know, from coming into town. So I get out there and I key up the radio and I asked dispatch, our central dispatch. I asked them. I said, "How far out is this from town?" And they said, "Well, we're not 100% sure. The readings we're getting are a couple minutes behind." Well, at that time, our sheriff, Matt Sanderson, of Hopkins County, he switched over to our frequency and heard me. And he said, 301 to 201, he said, "You have about 30 seconds before impact. You need to seek shelter right now." So let me back up about 10 minutes. The officers that were working had just arrested a guy in Clarkdale Court Apartments. Okay?
Oh, boy.
For a simple child support warrant. And I had told the officer that was off duty but lived in Clarkdale, get on the radio. I told him to seek shelter. Bad weather was coming in. And I told the officer that was working, take him and that arrestee, get to the station and open up that old jail cell. Because we had, at the time in the police department we were in before the tornado, we had a little jail cell, but it was all concrete and bars. And it's probably the safest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
So when the sheriff told me I needed to seek shelter, I quickly turned around and raced back to the station and basically ran in and hunkered down in the jail cell with my captain at the time, which was the arresting officer, and the guy that they just arrested. And
weird.
Yeah, kind of strange. We rode out the tornado in the jail cell. Now, we had no damage where we were at. Some shingles got ripped off and some end caps of the building got ripped off, but there was no damage. Of course, you could feel it going through. I was kind of put my hand up on the blocks, and you could feel everything just shaking, and the pressure, got pretty intense.
What did it sound like? Super loud?
Where we were at, there was no sound. I didn't hear anything. I honestly I didn't hear it. And the F4 tornado was 2 blocks behind the police department. Well, 3 blocks behind the police department. We're talking maybe 500 feet.
Wow. So a tornado really is proximity. Like, you have to be pretty dang close to it to get destroyed.
One of the biggest things I learned is, as the tornado's going and it's rotating in a clockwise fashion, if you are on, let's say, the north side of it, it's a lot more intense because it's moving and the wind is going that way. So
Okay.
if you're on the south side of it as it's going through, it's a lot less intense, if you understand what I'm saying,
Yep.
because the way it rotates and so on. And I
Sure.
learned that from the National Weather Service when they were in town surveying everything. But so the very first call we got before our radios went down, okay, this was at roughly about 10:37, 10:40, was a family, single mother, family of three, single mother of three, and her kids trapped under a house. And my first instinct is to get to them as fast as I possibly can. I
Yeah.
had no idea of any damage. Okay. I had no idea of anything. All right. So I ran out, jumped in my cruiser, lit up, took off, and um, I'm, I'm going through the side streets, going through the residential area. It's absolutely obliterated. Okay.
Must have been
All the telephone.
insane to see that.
Well, so here's the thing on that. I barely remember it because I had so much tunnel vision. The only thing I could really see was that house and those kids under that house. And I'm passing these houses that are gone. I'm passing families in the middle of the road. I actually went over two telephone poles, blew out my passenger side front tire on my cruiser, on my Tahoe, damaged the right front bumper because I hit a house, trying to get to this family.
Yeah.
And I realized I couldn't make it anymore, so I turned and went up through this little alleyway. And I right then when I got up into this alleyway, now mind you, it's 10:30, 10:40 at night, pitch black.
Yeah.
Obviously, no power, no street lights anymore. I stopped, and when I stopped, my tunnel vision started widening. And I remember I got out of my cruiser, and it's raining. I got out of my cruiser, and there was a guy and a girl, husband and wife. They were a little bit older. They were standing just kind of in a yard with debris and everything everywhere. And my takedowns are on, and my headlights and everything's flashing. And I got out of my cruiser and I stepped to the front and I looked at him and I said, "You guys need to go home." And he looked at me and said, "I don't have a home anymore." And he's holding his wife and she's got this nightgown on.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, "I don't have a home anymore." And when he said that, my tunnel vision just went, whew, and I realized the intents. I realized what had happened. And I knew I needed to get back to the station and start opening the police and fire department up for a triage. Because that in our community, that's where people go for help, is the police and fire department.
I mean, your radio must have been at this point. Was it going off? I mean, were people even able to call? Because when we have a storm, not like this, when we have a storm, it's like the radio calls go nuts for down trees, whatever. But were you getting tons of calls?
So central dispatch was yes, and keep in mind the way Hopkins County is, the tornadoes coming in from down here still have the entire rest of the county, so that the tornado's going through, and we're down here by ourselves. So, and our central dispatch is up in the center. So not only does the sheriff's department and everything else have to trying to figure out what's going on in Dawson, but they have the rest of the county that they're dealing with as well, where the tornadoes continuing to go through and wreak havoc on everything going through it. So I ended up making it back to the station. I limped my cruiser back to the station with on a flat tire and a bumper hanging off, and my captain's still standing there with the guy he arrested.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of looking at me like, and he said, "How bad is it?" And I said, "Keegan, Hall, Walnut, which is our main streets that go through town." I said, "They're all gone. Every house is gone. Everything is gone." And I looked at him and I looked at the guy he arrested and I said, "Are you, have you served his warrant?" And he said, "No." And I said, I looked at him and I said, "Well, tonight's your lucky night." I said, "Kick rocks, dude." I said, "Take his cuffs off, kick rocks." I said, "I don't have time to deal with your $400 child support warrant." I said, "Just get out of here." And I felt bad because, here it is, middle of the night after an F4 tornado, debris everywhere, houses have gone. And I kind of kicked him out on the street. He didn't even have his shoes on.
Ah.
But I mean, I couldn't deal with that at the time.
No,
I had
yeah.
no idea. I had no idea of the casualties. I had no idea of the injured, the walking wounded. I didn't.
Can you talk
Um,
about this picture a little bit, Mike? Up on the screen, there's a picture of one of your neighborhoods.
so the horseshoe on the bottom of that picture is a apartment complex.
Wow.
And there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 two-story tall buildings with 8 apartments in each one of those buildings. Where the bottom right of the picture is the only building that was kind of left standing. Partially, the rest of them were completely obliterated, and we had several fatalities from that apartment complex.
Oh, I can imagine. Was there enough warning for people? Did people get to a shelter? Or?
There was a lot of warning. It didn't just pop up. I mean, everybody knew that it was coming. All the weather service, the news, weather services, and everything. It's just you can have all the warning in the world, but if you don't have somewhere to go, or like you said earlier, I mean, even a lot of people that went into their basements. There was several people that went into their basements that were seriously wounded or even killed.
Yeah, I bet. So you're just discovering this big scene. You kick the prisoner loose. I mean, you must be thinking in your mind at this point, just that. How many people are dead, and who's going to come help? Right? Because it's like, and this is still going on. It just is done with your community, but it's happening to other communities. Did the state
To make matters worse, there was another small tornado that was like an F1, I think, that was like 20, 25 miles to the south of us that was kind of mirroring that one. So all of our resources to the south were busy doing their own thing. And that was the only way into town, the south. Nobody could get into town from the north or the east or the west.
Right.
So not to fast forward this, but the first ambulance didn't get into town until 2:00 in the morning.
And what time did it hit? Midnight?
10:35, 10:37.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time for people to be bleeding and injured.
Oh, I mean, we had so I opened up the police and the fire department. Several of the firefighters on the volunteer fire department showed up, and we started getting everything around. My captain at the time, his wife, which they had she had access coming into town. She was a nurse practitioner, and there was an ER doctor that lived pretty in close proximity to town. He ended up coming into town, so I had a nurse practitioner and an ER doctor.
Nice.
There in our triage, that was huge. I mean, because some of the stuff that came in, we probably had in the 2 hours before I got the school to open up, because we got overran very quickly. We probably had 30 people show up that ranged everywhere from some scratches to one girl had a stick about that big going right through her bicep and out the other side. And her boyfriend had broke it off. And here she's got this like small log going through her bicep.
Whoa.
We had a guy that was, his eyeball was hanging out. And there was a massive trauma to the side of his head. The one that really got to me was the fire department members and the nurse practitioner and the ER doctor. They were working on everybody, as best as they could. And I kept hearing this screaming coming from the kitchen of the fire department. This guy just screaming in there. So I asked, my captain's wife, I said, what's going on with that guy in there? And she said, he's black tagged. And I said, I don't know what that is. And she said, there's a good chance he's going to die due to the massive trauma he has, the blood loss he has. He had, if I'm not mistaken, he had a broken femur that was a compound fracture. And I said, so you're telling me that he might die in there? And she said, yeah. I said, that's unacceptable. I said, they come here for help. That's unacceptable. And she grabbed me and turned me around and looked out into the fire bays and out into the parking lot. And she said, "Do you see all these other people?" She said, "We have to tend to them." She said, "I'm not sure he's going to make it, so he has been considered black tagged."
Yeah, triaging him.
That was hard for me to accept. It was
Yeah.
very hard for me to accept. Um, we ended up getting I saw the assistant principal out in the street, and I ran over and told him, I said, "You need to go open the school up because we don't have the size is starting to become too small for the triage here. We have to open the school up." Now, mind you, the police and fire department still had power. We had a natural gas generator. We have a natural gas generator that when the power goes out, it just kicks on, and we had all the power,
Right.
which the school did not. So you kind of lost that having power, having what you need. Um, but they opened the school up, and then had several individuals that were there with SUVs and pickup trucks, and they started transporting the um, walking wounded, so to say, to the school where they continued triage, and where they also opened it up for residents that weren't hurt or weren't injured at all, but to get out of the weather. Because keep in mind, I mean, it's still pouring down rain. So that was a big thing as well.
Wow.
As far as the triage goes, it kind of started tapering off. Our first ambulance, the two of them showed up around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I think each one of those ambulances ended up transporting like 4 or 5 they put in there. Um, uh,
Wow.
but the good news out of all that is the guy that was black tagged, he did not die.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, no, he didn't die. So that was a blessing. But um, throughout the rest of the night, we pretty much made sure that everything with the triage center was good. We did go. My officers that ended up coming out, we proceeded on and started helping all of the search and rescues, going through houses and through this and through that. I didn't do a lot of that because I was kind of in control. I was kind of, I guess, acting IC
Yeah.
for the entire city, so I couldn't be out in the debris and the rubble looking for victims. So I pretty much kind of stayed around the station for quite a while, and then moved up to the school. So then morning hit, when the sun come up, you realized what the devastation was.
Yeah.
And it was very disturbing to see a community that you know everything about, that you've done everything to protect these people and go to bat for them, and do this, that, and the other, and then you drive up through these neighborhoods, well, what you can drive through, and everything's gone. I mean, absolutely everything is gone. And then to start, the next day, um, the body counts, and knowing the people that lost their lives. And one thing that was horrible was the coroner had me do positive IDs on all the DBs.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was not fun. That
That's
wasn't fun at all. So
how many people were ended up passing away?
I think 17, 18. We had a couple pass away from that,
Wow.
had Dawson Springs address, but they lived just outside of town. We had there was some that passed away that I was very close to. One of them, a female that used to be the janitor of the police department. She cleaned the PD. I asked the coroner when he called me to do the positive ID. There was some firefighters there, and I asked the firefighters. I said, "Is that so and so?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm not doing it then." I said, "Are you sure it's her?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, I can't do it." I looked at the coroner and I said, I can't do that one.
Yeah.
So we had one gentleman that he passed away holding his dog, and his dog passed away as well. They were crushed by a car, and when search and rescue loaded him up, there was which this was like a day later or 2 days later when they found him. of course, it was a search and rescue team from, I think, Nashville or Knoxville, if I'm not mistaken. Luckily, we had local firefighters there, and the firefighters are like, "Hey, his dog goes with him," and they're like, "What?" They said, "Yeah, his dog goes with him. Put his dog in that bag with him." And we made sure that his dog stayed with him. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the dog even got buried with him.
Wow,
And
man.
that right there is part of small town policing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely crazy, Mike. And then so obviously, like I'm just thinking when you said the sun came up, but then the sun comes up the next day, and the next day, and that kind of damage, you got to look at that for a long time. It's like you never get away from the reminder of the tragedy that happened. That's got to be hard to even live with.
It is. There's times. I mean, like I said, I've been patrolling Dawson for 16 years, and there was spots up there where I would be patrolling, and I wouldn't know where I was. I couldn't
Yeah,
tell exactly where I was because you always, when you're out, driving around or whatever, the landmarks, that big oak tree or that fence or this house, that's what you base your location off of. And when none of that's there, it's hard to determine exactly where you're at.
yeah, I
So
bet.
one of
There's
the
a
things that I was credited for was I was credited from the state, from the governor, was, and it was the last podcast I did for DOCJT about this. They asked me how looting was. So the two towns, the two communities that got hit from this tornado in Kentucky on December 10th, 2021 was Dawson Springs and Mayfield. Mayfield got hit. They had actually more deaths than Dawson Springs. Theirs went through downtown and destroyed all their businesses, where
oh
ours went through residential areas. But they also got hit. Their candle factory got hit, and they had. I mean, there was 100 people in the candle factory when the tornado hit it.
wow,
So they had a lot more deaths than we did. But one of the problems Mayfield had is they got hit with looting hard, very quickly. Um, but what I did, I anticipated it. I anticipated the looting way well before even any of the criminals even thought about looting. So I reached out to Kentucky Chiefs Association, Kentucky Sheriff's Association, Kentucky State Police, all the neighboring jurisdictions, and the night of December 11th. Now, mind you, at the time, my department was a 5-man department. 4 officers working the street and 1 full-time school resource officer.
yep,
Uh, Usually, only 1 officer out at a time. That's the way it was on December 10th. December 11th, I had 30 officers working the street because I brought so many in from different departments, Kentucky State Police, the sheriff's departments, plus our locals, our sheriff's department, Madisonville Police Department. um, so that was kind of a big hurdle for me because here I am, chief of a small town police department, a couple officers working the street. Now I got 30 guys on the street.
yeah,
And the good thing about that was the National Guard was here. They shut town down. You could not come into town unless you had a Dawson Springs address. There was no outside after dark. Um, even if you did try to loot, you're going to run into a police officer. I mean, when you have one tiny little square mile of rubble of houses, there's 30 officers patrolling it, you're not going to get away with anything.
yeah. Is
So
that's a real consideration even in a small town that looters would come in from?
huge. There was looters coming in from all over the place, like over
Wow,
in Caldwell County, in Princeton, where they had a bunch of looters from Michigan come down, that were posing as construction workers and volunteers. They were wearing safety vests, and they're running around looting, just stealing things left and right.
talk about scum of the earth, huh?
Oh, I mean, absolutely, absolute, just trash. And one of the pictures you have is one of our storage units. No, not that one. Yeah, that one right there. That is a mini storage unit that probably had 200 units in it, and everybody's stuff that they stored in their storage unit was scattered. I mean, that was taken probably a week later, maybe I don't know, 5 days later. But that road up behind it, all of their stuff was scattered across that main road. All that personal stuff. So just imagine the nightmare when those people came to get their stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you have 100, 200 people there to try to get their stuff out of their storage unit, and it's just all in a big pile.
Yeah, they got to come get it before the front end loaders come and throw it all away. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was, there was a lot of different things hurdles that we had to overcome that night.
I can imagine,
and not just that night, but for weeks and weeks and weeks on end after.
Yeah. So, and then you guys got hit again with an F2, right?
This year on May 26th, the week before, that was a Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. The week before, I was actually in-service training up in Richmond at our Kentucky's training facility, DOCJT. I was in drone pilot because I'm a drone pilot. We have a drone. I was in training up there, and come back from training that Friday, and that Sunday we got hit with another tornado. This one didn't actually come through our city limits. It was just north. All the people that got hit was Dawson Springs address, but they're not actually in the city limits, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Dawson Springs is 4.5 square miles, 5 square miles, but the mailing address is like 30 square miles. And this was literally right across the interstate. And it was almost a mirror image of watching my wife and family go to her in-law or her parents' house while I proceeded on, and was pretty much the first one in the rubble that night to start pulling people out of houses.
You must have been thinking, like, this has got to stop happening. Like, what the hell? Is this now my life? Just every couple of years, there's a friggin' tornado that comes through. You must have, the people in town must have had serious PTSD when this thing was coming in, just because of the first one. They must have been freaked out.
Oh, the second one. I mean, people have there's a tornado siren or a bad weather siren or whatever they call it now, right here at the police department. And every Wednesday it goes off at noon. It used to go off every day at noon, but now it only goes off every Wednesday. And we've had to back it up, and we no longer do it for severe thunderstorms. The countywide, they no longer do it for severe thunderstorms because some of these people hear it go off and they're in a closet, with bottled water and phone, and it's just a test.
Yeah.
No, the second one I think it was categorized as an F2. It was pretty rough. We did not have any fatalities with it though.
Thank God.
We pulled several people out of houses that night, and animals and so on and so forth. I think that one, I think the first one opened up a lot of people's eyes, and they had a better plan of their shelter.
Right.
So that was chaos that night. It was more chaotic for me, the second one, because the first one, my hands were tied, kind of being the IC of everything. The second one, it wasn't mine. I wasn't IC. All I was out there was doing was trying to help people.
Right.
So, it was a little bit easier just going, house to house or rubble to rubble or open basement to open basement, just helping people get to the road and then move on to the next and so on and so forth.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's scary, man. I mean, even the addresses you're going house to house, you must have been thinking, is someone going to be dead in here? Like, what am I going to find? How long did you stay on that night?
All night. I come out at I think that one hit at 8:30. I come out at about 8:20, 8:15 that night, and I don't think I went home probably till about 5 or 6 the next morning.
Yeah.
And then, see, I went home, and the EMA director called me and said, "Can you get your drone out and start flying the tornado path and start recording everything and get me the footage?" I said, "Absolutely." So I wasn't home but just a couple hours, and then got right back out and flew the path with the drone and was getting thermal imaging and normal imaging and everything through everything to get the video footage for the EMA director.
Do you have those goggles they wear for drones, or do you just do the screen?
Uh, Ours is a screen, but I plug in an HDMI cable onto the controller, and it goes up into a big 32-inch screen. That way,
Okay, that's
people's
smart.
not sitting there looking over my shoulder.
Right.
Um, so we have a really nice drone. It's a DJI M30T. So I'm very happy with it. Very, very happy with it. We've done a lot of stuff with it.
I bought one. I bought a DJI 10 years ago now. I had
Mhm.
like they were like it was like $1,500. I had good tax return, and I was kind of like I
We'll
kind of
say it
really
was probably a Phantom.
Phantom. It was a Phantom 4, so it was like
Hmm.
that. It wasn't the first generation; it was the next one,
Hmm.
and it's actually right next to me. I haven't flown it in probably a couple of years, but it was. I mean, the technology when it came out was in. I mean, the GPS tethering where it would just hover and you could pull it and it would
Yeah.
go right back to. I mean, even 10 years ago, and then if it was ran out of batteries or whatever, it was going to crash. It would just come back to where it launched from and land. I mean, they are so cool, and I've seen guys recently with the goggles,
Yeah.
so it's like you're flying. I don't know how much that costs, but that seems like it'd be
Actually, it's
awesome.
not as much. So our drone, our the PD that the PD owns, when we bought it, it was 16,000.
Woo.
Uh,
It's got
yeah.
thermal and all that, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's got a thermal. There's 4 cameras on it. There's a 300 times zoom on it, or 200 or 300.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
almost as good as a chopper for search and rescue. You can fly up patches of woods and look for people, and
Oh yeah, well, one and also it does active tracking, so I can get it up in the air, 200-300 feet up in the air, and turn active tracking on, and any human or vehicle will be lit up with a box, and you can tap on it, and it'll actively track that. If that car takes off, it'll take off, and it'll do its thing, and it'll stay right on that vehicle or that person.
that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, it to me and everybody that is involved with it, the city council, the mayor know that that's probably the most valuable piece of equipment that the city owns.
Yeah, absolutely, big money. Mike, can you tell us? Switch gears a little bit here. Can you tell us about a positive or heartwarming situation you dealt with?
Yeah, yeah. And this is kind of a strange one. It is a kind of a long story, but I'll cut it down. So I arrested this kid one day, and this is probably summer. Well, it's summer of 22, so it would have been after the first tornado. Um, I arrested this guy. He had a warrant, and out of courtesy, I went and told his mom. She worked at the local store. I told her, I said, "Hey, arrested your son. Just letting you know I'm taking him to jail." She said, "All right, I appreciate you letting me know." And he was in the back seat of the car. And before I left, I said, "Is there anything you need?" And she's like, "Yeah, I need an air conditioner." And I said, "Well, call an AC man. I'm not a cop. I'm a cop. I'm not an AC man or whatever."
Right.
And so I left, and on the way to the jail, which it's like a 20-minute drive for us to get to the jail. Uh, on the way to the jail, I kept having the little guy on my shoulder. She needs an air conditioner, and I'm like, whatever, not my problem. And trust me, this lady has cussed me out time and time again over my career. Um,
Yeah, one of those.
yeah, yeah. So I drop him off at jail, and on my way back, little guy on my shoulder. She needs an air conditioner. I'm like, I don't care. Why am I thinking about this girl needing an air conditioner? I mean, she's not a very nice person sometimes.
Right.
So I get back to town, and I was always told, growing up, when that little voice in your head is talking to you, listen to it. Even if you don't agree with it, listen to it. You know, of course, don't be doing bad things, but listen
Right.
to it. So I get back into town, and we had a gentleman that was kind of implanted in the city government, that was the liaison between FEMA and the city. And So I went right in there and I said, "Hey, I need a window unit air conditioner." And he said, For what?" So I told him, and he was like, "Chief, you've never asked me for anything." He said, "I've tried to get you all sorts of stuff from FEMA and this, that, and the other." He said, "You've never asked me for anything." He's like, "I can see the sincerity, in you, that you need this air conditioner." I said, "To be honest with you, I don't really want to do it, but something's telling me to do it." And but I said, I need an air conditioner. And he ended up he went over to one town away, went to Tractor Supply or something or other, and took some donation money and went and bought a window unit air conditioner and brought it to me and said, "Here." And I took it down to that lady and gave it to her, and she just stood there in awe. I said, "Trust me, I have no idea why I got you this air conditioner. I have no idea why I did." I said, "But here it is. Here's the air
Nice.
conditioner." And she just sat there and bawled her eyes out and gave me this huge hug. And ever since then, she hasn't cussed me out as much.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that story. That's great, man. Mike, popular question on the show. People getting into law enforcement are thinking about doing it. Maybe they're on the fence. Do you have advice to new police officers?
Make sure this is what you want to do. Make sure you have that desire to help people. If you're wanting to get into this job to put handcuffs on people and serve warrants, it's probably not for you. Because law enforcement needs to get back into the phase of being there for people and helping people. And one of the things I push is I don't do numbers anymore for my council and my mayor. I don't believe in them. I think that pushes law enforcement to be doing things that adds fuel to us being the bad guys. And when brass and mayors and so on and so forth are pushing for numbers, citations, and this, that, and the other, and arrests, all that's doing is adding fuel to the fire for us to be the bad guys. And we need to back up and start concentrating more on helping people. When you're out patrolling and you see a little old lady carrying groceries in, stop, grab the groceries from her, take them in her house for her. Do those type of things. So what I mean, let me clarify that answer. Make sure this is what you want to do. And like I said, if you just want to be, roughhousing and putting cuffs on people and taking people to jail, this might not be the thing for you. So make sure this is what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get it. Not that those are bad things, taking bad guys to jail, but
no, it's not a bad thing at all.
If it's your only mission, it can create a cop that isn't going to fit in many communities.
Exactly. And there is, let me clarify on that. There is a time and a place for taking bad guys to jail. Absolutely, 100%. But I always tell my guys I would much rather them, be doing community style policing rather than going out here and writing a million petty little seatbelt tickets or rolling through a stop sign or whatever. KSP comes into town and does all those type of things. If that's what they want to do, fire on it. I like the community style policing. I like the style where we're actually helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. Words of wisdom, Mike. Thank you for that. It was an honor to have you on, brother. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, pleasure was all mine. Loved it.
All right, excellent. Can you hang out for just like 2 or 3 minutes when I do the outro?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll be right with you, sir. The great Chief Michael Opalek. Wow, crazy story about the tornadoes. Other great stories in there. Honor to have him. Thank you, sir, for that. Guys, thank you for all the support you've been giving the show. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for the Patreon members. If you really love the show, you want to show your support monetarily, which I appreciate, you can do that. Link is in the show notes to Patreon. You can click a couple different levels and do that. But don't worry, it's going to be free. You're still going to get episodes every week, even if you don't do that. I know times are tough and it's hard for people to find the money. So the point is for as many people as possible to hear these stories and gain a better appreciation for the men and women of law enforcement. With all that being said, it's time to thank the Patreon supporters, starting with the captain level, the great Jamin Jacks from Security 101. Check them out. The great and powerful Andy Biggs, everybody, lieutenant level. The great and handsome Tom Connell, lieutenant level. Let's get down to the sergeants. Adam McMahon, Adam Mihal, the great Ben Peters, everybody. Brad Thompson, Dan Carlson from Burley Boys. Check him out on Instagram. Amazing woodworker. The great Chris June. None other than Clark Lacuff, everybody. Dave Ellman, the great Dennis Karaskio, Detective Nick Adams, ladies and gentlemen. Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys. See you at church. The great Dylan Mosher, everybody. Elliot Sykes, ladies and gentlemen. The great Gary Steiner. George Karyotis, thank you, sir. Greg Gadboy, everybody. J.A. Family and Company, thank you. Love you guys. Jake Pinedo, ladies and gentlemen. James Rose, the great Jason Labrie, Jason Lau, everyone. The great Jessica King, John Jordan, John Shoemaker, John and Aaron Kate. See you at church. Love you guys. Justin King, ladies and gentlemen. Kyle Roberts, the great Kyle Napier. Lauren Stimson, everybody. The handsome Lane Campbell. Lisa G, everybody. Michael Roach of Roach Machines AI Solutions. Check them out. Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles. Thank you, sir. Check out his podcast. The great Nancy Hammond. Paul Maloney, everybody. Past guest. Amazing guest. Check out his episode. The great Raymond Arsenal. Richard Tolles. Keep on trucking, brother. Sasha McNabb, ladies and gentlemen. Scott Young. Sean Clifford. Seth Wright. The great Sheriff Ronald Long. Tammy Walsh, holding it down to dispatch. Tony Fahey, ladies and gentlemen. William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you. Thank you very much. Zach Haney, everybody, and the great Zachary Pleat. Guys, thank you for the support. I truly appreciate it. You're keeping the lights on in the show. That's the show for this week, guys. I love you, and I'll see you next time.